Hello, my name is Adella and I'm a people pleaser. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're good. Hope you're well. All right, it's no secret on this channel, okay? I've said it before. I'm a people pleaser. I am a people pleaser. I'm a recovering people pleaser, but I'm a people pleaser nonetheless. And now that I'm 30, I don't know if you know, but I turned 30, I'm adamant of ridding myself of the negative parts of being a people pleaser. I want to get rid of enough people pleaser until there's just a good amount of people pleaser. So naturally, over the past few years, I have been deep diving into the core of a people pleaser. Like, what even is it? Because it took me a long time to even admit or accept or acknowledge that I was a people pleaser. Why am I a people pleaser? And why are some people not people pleasers? And what's wrong with being a people pleaser anyway? And what's right about being a people pleaser? Because I'm a strong believer, I've said this before, that traits are a spectrum. There's a healthy side, there's an unhealthy side, and that applies to being a people pleaser too. And of course, how to keep the healthy parts and drop the unhealthy parts. And with my 30 years of experience as a people pleaser and my sort of few years of research, which included therapy, my biggest revelation and what I actually want to talk about in this video is that people pleasing is extremely selfish. But we'll get into that in a moment. First things first, let's define it. What actually is a people pleaser? Because for so long, I rejected that title. I rejected the belief that I could be a people pleaser because in my head, a people pleaser is someone who just lives for the approval of other people. Someone who's timid, who's meek, who's afraid, who walks on eggshells, who doesn't stick up for herself. And I just didn't think that really fully describes me. But therapy was truly a wake-up call. The Cambridge Dictionary defines a people pleaser as somebody who cares a lot about whether other people like them and always wants others to approve of their actions. That was embarrassing. And I don't know if it was pride or if it was a lack of self-awareness, but I just couldn't fully put myself in that category, even though it was kind of describing me. But then I also came across another article which started with the sentence, people pleasers strive to keep the peace and avoid conflict at all cost, often at their own expense. And I thought, bingo, there it is. And this is essentially what therapy revealed to me. I love inner peace. I live for inner peace. I am a fiend for inner peace. And a people pleaser's biggest driving force is that desire to keep the peace and avoid conflict. And that, Your Honor, that is what makes a people pleaser selfish. Hear me out. We often think of people pleasers as selfless because, it's in the name, people pleasers. We are trying to please other people, often at our own expense. And when you're trying to please other people, that often, most times will come in the form of affirmation, of love, of acceptance, of kindness. But let's dig a little deeper into those motivations, shall we? If for many people pleasers like myself, the ultimate goal is inner peace, then my kindness, my affirmation, my acceptance is actually for my own gain. I'm not necessarily agreeing with you because I agree with you. Sometimes I'm agreeing with you to avoid potential conflict and to make sure that you continue to like me because it brings me peace. The more selfless act would be to call you out with love, to correct a mistake that might do you a disservice in the long term. But selfishly, I might be thinking about my own inner peace and therefore withholding the truth. And let's go back to a couple sentences ago. I said, I want to avoid conflict and make sure that you continue liking me. Because people pleasers are also defined sometimes as people who really crave approval and affirmation. So the motive to please other people is closely tied to the belief that conflict may lead to disapproval and dislike. And so those two are closely linked. Because let me tell you, the peace that comes from the approval and the admiration of other people is like a drug. And to be clear, I'm not talking about just attention. I know there are people who just crave attention. There's a specific type of approval that people, how many times am I going to say people pleasers? There's a specific type of approval that people pleasers crave. It's like when your favorite teacher told you well done. Or it's like when you make a really good point and it's met with a like a really screw face, wow, yeah, brilliant point. There's just nothing like it. And you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, it's no surprise that words of affirmation is my love language. Now, empathy is a trait that I think many people pleasers possess, and while that is a good thing, and I'm going to speak about the positives a bit later in the video, we can be guilty of using that to manipulate other people in our favor. Hear me out. An example of this is me as an employee. I remember a retail job that I had, and I had quite a difficult manager, but I just knew, I was observant and I knew the things that made her happy and I knew the things that made her tick. And okay, yes, it's great that I'm bringing up these things, to make you sort of smile and happy. But really and truly, I don't care. But I'm going to speak about these things to you because I know that if I use this word, if I say this thing, you're now going to soften up and you're going to make my life easier, and I'm not going to have to deal with a difficult manager. And if we were to really get deep, for my fellow people of faith out there, one could argue that people pleasing is a sin. What sin is it, I hear you ask? Idolatry. We could argue that it is idolatry. I read an article on this topic and it said this. When our guiding force is popularity, we have switched gods, and that is idolatry. When we allow anything to control us other than the Holy Spirit, our hearts have erected a shrine to a competing God. And the references here are Ephesians 5:18, Galatians 5:16 and 25. Seeking praise from fallible humans rather than seeking God's approval is a slippery slide into error. John 12:43 tells us that even in Jesus' day, some people believed his message but refused to follow him because, quote, they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. And even if you're not a Christian or you don't have faith, I think we can agree that allowing others, even unknowingly, to dictate our actions, rather than our actions being based on our own judgments, our own convictions, our own beliefs, is not really the way to live an authentic life. Like people can influence you for sure. You can listen to people and they can change your mind. But for our whole behavior, our whole movements, our whole life, our whole way of being to be dictated purely on other people's thoughts, it's no way to live. But I think the biggest thing about people pleasers, which is not only selfish, but self-detrimental, is that the whole conflict-free, everybody loves me, peaceful life is very short-lived. It's very short-term. And what people pleasing actually looks like long-term is this. There's resentment. When you spend so much time overlooking small grievances in the name of peace, you build up resentment. You build up resentment towards people who these small things could have been resolved, but now you've let it build up, and now you look at this person and you're like, I don't actually like you anymore. And they haven't on paper done anything they haven't done anything big to hurt you, but there's just been so many occasions where you've overlooked when you should have said, oh, I don't like that. When you should have said, this thing that you did yesterday kind of bothered me. Small thing. But now you've left them and it's built resentment. Another thing is a lack of deep relationships. I think deep, meaningful, long-lasting relationships are built over time, years of honest conversation, and sometimes grappling. If you're always wearing this agreeable mask, there's only so deep that the relationship can go on your side. And now my closest friends are the people with whom I've let the mask slip, the ones who know that I'm not perfect. And also, people pleasers often rob other people of the chance of loving them wholly, loving them truly, loving who they are. Telling a friend that they've hurt you, being honest with what you like and what you dislike, telling people your boundaries. To a people pleaser, it feels like you're being a nightmare, but you're really just teaching people how to love you. And it's okay, it's normal, it's not a burden. It's not gonna make them run for the hills. A true friend will be happy to love you wholly. Just the same way that you, as a people pleaser, are happy to love your friends wholly. You don't judge them for I don't know, being imperfect or telling you what they like and what they don't like, and for you having to make sacrifices and compromises for them. But for some reason you feel like if you now start speaking up, all of a sudden you're going to become a burden. It's not true. Now, obviously, I have to caveat and say that this video is focusing on one or few negative aspects of being a people pleaser. But like I said, I don't believe traits to be binary. And so I think there are some good things about being a people pleaser. For example, I'm empathetic. Part of the reason that I struggle to call people out is because I genuinely see where they're coming from. Like I genuinely often see the heart behind something. I can quite easily see both sides of an argument if two people are in a disagreement. And I think it's a great trait to have because I think people pleasers are quite good at humanizing people and understanding that most times people's intentions aren't malicious. And I think that's a trait that we desperately need more of now, especially in the social media era where social media already makes you dehumanize people and it's already a monologue as opposed to a dialogue. And so people are so quick to villainize people. Whereas if you had some empathy, you would maybe start to understand where that person might be coming from, even if you disagree with them. And it makes for a nicer environment to have a dialogue. Also, I'm kind. And I think mostly because of my previous point, when you can kind of feel other people's emotions, it makes it extremely, extremely difficult to be intentionally unkind without just feeling heavy. It will literally eat you alive. Even when I'm like, listen, yeah, I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. When push comes to shove, it's really hard to be unkind when you have empathy. And finally, people pleasing is good. Okay. I know the term people pleaser isn't necessarily considered a good thing, but if you think about pleasing people, pleasing people is nice. It's good. Don't let this selfish society make you think otherwise. Doing things just because just because it makes somebody else happy, that is a beautiful thing. And if we can get to that place of making other people happy without compromising yourself, without lying, without manipulating, or without compromising your own beliefs, or without always putting yourself second or last, then great. And also sometimes you can put yourself second or last. Sometimes you can put someone else's needs before yours, okay? It's not the worst thing in the world. In fact, it's a great thing. So what am I doing? As a recovering people pleaser, what am I doing about it? It's simple, but it's hard. What it is I'm simply looking for opportunities for conflict. I'm looking for opportunities that come where I would normally just sort of agree and be agreeable and avoid conflict, and I'm actively trying to do what's against my instincts. So I'm actively trying to speak up. It could simply be as simple as telling a friend that you disagree with their behavior. Or it could be going back to another friend and being like, this thing that you did last week, I didn't say anything at the time, but actually it hurt me or it bothered me. And to a non-people pleaser, to the majority of you listening, it sounds so basic. You're like, okay, is that it? But to a people pleaser, to someone like me, I might as well walk up to my friend and slap them straight in the face. That's what it feels like. And it sounds stupid even saying it. When your conflict bar is non-existent, the smallest bit of conflicts literally feels like a world star. And that's also why I'm sort of practicing this with a small pool of trusted people. Like, I have literally said to people, listen, I don't want to avoid conflict anymore, okay? So if you see me like speaking up about something small, just know that this is taking a lot of me. I'm going to say no more. I've literally said that to some people. I'm going to say no more. And I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm not just flinging conflict out left, right, and center because it's not comfortable to me. And so I'm just doing it with trusted people. And they're actually helping me. They're like, okay, yeah. Well done. I know that took a lot for you to do that. I'm being vulnerable with those close to me, and I'm expressing myself honestly. And even with people that are not that close to me, when the spirit leads me, I am trying to be as honest as possible. And also it takes someone doing, because sometimes you're agreeing with someone, and I found the thing with being a bit of a people pleaser is that sometimes you even struggle to know what you think. And so that's something I'm working on. It's like actually stopping, maybe before I've even read the comments, before I've asked someone else's opinion, just stopping and be like, all right, Adella, what do you actually think about this before you get influenced? Because I'm a sucker for a good argument. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. If you are a people pleaser like me, a recovering people pleaser, let's meet in the comments, okay? Tell me, is it something you're working on? Is it something you've overcome? Are you in a good place now? And if so, what have you done? What did you do? What do you want to do? Equally, if you are a conflict queen, okay? If you are like some of my best friends who are they're just not afraid. In fact, if you're like my husband and you're just not afraid of conflict, you eat conflict for breakfast, then also please meet me in the comments. Share your wisdom. Tell me what to do. Yeah, I love to hear from you guys all the time because you're just so smart. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Check out some similar videos here, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Love, love, love. Mwah.